We're making meat from plants. That's never been done before.
We can use plants to give people everything that they like about meat. We can make it taste the same or better.
Some nutritionists warn that the processed ingredients in plant-based meat are less healthy than vegetables by themselves.
But they've also been slammed for being just as junky, ultra-processed, or just a bad ripoff of real meat.
Are plant-based meats really better for us, or are we being sold a lie? There certainly seems to be a lot of celebrities and big players pushing them these days.
In 2019, Impossible Foods raised another $300 million to ramp up production from the likes of Google Ventures, Bill Gates, and a slew of entertainment celebrities.
But is all this hype more food propaganda? Perhaps the fact that some of these fake meats contain new, bizarre proteins that even the FDA didn't recognize might be concerning.
You know, when you look at Impossible Burger and companies like that, they use a lot of novel proteins. In other words, things in their meat that we really can't even fully understand.
It has never been proven safe for long-term daily consumption in human beings.
Which is precisely why you might want to think twice before eating them. And if that wasn't enough to put you off, maybe the complex cocktail of questionable ingredients might be, like hexane, a known neurotoxin, caramel coloring linked to cancer in rats, red food dye number 3, a carcinogen banned in cosmetics, and tet-butyl hydroquinone, to name a few.
Because it's not really classified as a food, it's not recognized as being safe. There's really no long-term safety studies, so who knows what it's going to do to the population.
Rat feeding studies suggest the Impossible Burger may not be safe to eat.
And Impossible Foods has a whopping 19 patents for manufacturing at last count. They've taken food processing to the level that rivals McDonald's. But for some reason, this is meant to be good for us.
This completely new system of foods made in factories, ultra-processed, and presented as good food.
And as much as they tell us it's for our own good, it's a little strange that although anyone could raise animals for meat, only highly sophisticated labs with advanced technology can make fake meat.
Biochemistry, it's molecular biology, it's genomics, genetics. We had something like 80 research scientists, something like half of them had PhDs or doctoral degrees. Super great scientists treating this as a hard scientific problem.
This video isn't about plant versus meat. It's about highly processed food masquerading as the healthier choice. This is the story of the plant-based meat lie. So how do you get a bunch of soy byproducts to taste like a juicy beef burger? Well, to start with, you're going to need a team of scientists and a lot of high-tech equipment and an assortment of peculiar ingredients to pull this off. The first challenge is replicating the heme protein naturally found in beef, as that's where the flavor comes from. You might call this an impossible task, but for companies like Impossible Foods, there seems to be no such thing. With enough resources, ingenuity, and a heap of chemicals, they've managed to create a new form of heme called soy leg hemoglobin from Roundup sprayed GMO soybeans nonetheless.
The fact that we're using genetically engineered heme, why that's important, why that's safe, why that's a good thing.
And what would seem like another seemingly impossible feat, they also managed to convince the FDA that this new heme is perfectly safe, even without any long-term data allowing for real risks to emerge.
So what should scare the shit out of you about the Impossible Burger is all of the regulations that surround meat, none of them surround that. So they can make any claim they want, and there's no laws that exist that stop them from doing that because it's uncharted territory.
So should we be concerned about this seemingly lack of regulation? Well, according to the Center of Food Safety, yes. FDA approved soy leg hemoglobin, even though it conducted none of the long-term animal studies that are needed. Studies for cancer, reproductive impairment, and other adverse effects, says Bill Freese, science policy analyst at the Center for Food Safety. But if that wasn't enough to be concerned, then perhaps those weird new proteins I mentioned earlier might be.
In the discussion in this document with the FDA, Impossible Foods admitted that up to a quarter of its heme ingredient was composed of 46 unexpected additional proteins, some of which are unidentified and none of which were assessed for safety in the dossier.
It was showing that it's toxic for rats. They fed rats the Impossible Burger and the rats are getting sick.
Who knows what these might do to our biology? Only time will tell. Impossible Foods justifies their use of genetically modified soy, claiming it's a commitment to consumers and the planet.
Right.
However, the majority of the soy now used is GMO, which has resulted in a massive rise in the use of Roundup. And studies have shown that Roundup could have negative effects on our environment. You see, our soils have been sucked flat by this sort of chemical farming, producing foods that are devoid of nutrients. But somehow, plant-based meat manufacturers claim this is a good thing. And although you might feel confident in the FDA's approval, they don't have a squeaky clean track record for getting it right. And if you want to know more truth when it comes to health, make sure to get free access to our documentary series, The Longevity Code, featuring dozens of doctors and health experts revealing the true causes of heart disease, cancer, diabetes, autoimmune disease, and more, packaged into 7 episodes of exclusive video footage. Plus, get digital copies of The Art of Sleep and The Obese Brain books. Just click the link in the description below. It's not a stretch to recall the FDA's questionable track record when it comes to approving novel ingredients in food. After all, they did approve trans fats with little safety data too.
The trans fats are proven to increase the risk of heart disease, which is the #1 killer of adults in America.
Back in 1993, they warned 100,000 people died every year as a result of deaths related to trans fats.
Yet the FDA happily gave trans fats their stamp of approval when they first hit the food scene. Over time, however, the health risks of trans fats became more apparent, and in 2006, the FDA did a rather embarrassing backflip when they finally realized these seemingly harmless fats weren't so safe after all.
Uncle Sam is cracking down on artificial trans fat. The FDA will start requiring companies to phase out the partially hydrogenated oils over the next 3 years.
Companies were given 3 years to phase out trans fats from their products, with the ban going into full effect in 2018. It only took 4 decades, and who knows how many heart attacks and strokes for the FDA to sort out this mess. It just goes to show how many harmful ingredients with ridiculously high risks get the green light in the first place and pushed onto the public, who become involuntary participants in big foods experiments. And although you might think by now we have enough evidence that when scientists get involved with food and mess with chemicals, bad things can happen. Yet despite this, plant-based meats seem to ignore all of that and fill their products with highly processed vegetable oils too. Impossible Burger's main ingredients include GMO soy and sunflower oil. And Beyond Meat, on the other hand, features pea protein isolate and canola oil. The irony is hard to ignore, as these oils are considered by many experts to be highly inflammatory, linked to blocked arteries, and associated with a slew of health complications.
When a processed food manufacturer is using these oils to make candy or salad dressing, if anytime it's heated, it's going to react with oxygen. And because they're unstable, the molecules will mutate. And when they mutate, they become toxins.
When vegetable oils undergo extensive processing, like how plant-based meats are made, they can form good old trans fats. One study discovered that a mere 2% increase in energy intake from trans fats nearly doubled the risk of developing coronary disease. The processing of vegetable oils often involves exposure to high temperature, treatment with petroleum-based solvents like hexane, and addition of deodorizing chemicals to mask the unpleasant odors, and more chemicals to enhance the color. The term highly processed hardly seems sufficient. The more chemicals and processing we add, the further from real food we get. However, despite having a heap of processed ingredients with questionable health status, the CEO and founder of Impossible Foods, Pat Brown, has another rather impossible belief about his foods. Pat harps on about the fact that his foods are low in cholesterol, believing this is a major benefit to consumers.
But from a consumer health standpoint, what's important is it has zero cholesterol, but it's lower in calories, lower in total fat, lower in saturated fat, and zero cholesterol.
40% less saturated fat, zero cholesterol.
Pat missed the memo, but the attack on eating cholesterol of the 80s, even hitting the front page of Time magazine in the height of the hysteria, is no longer held to be true by many experts. A 2018 study sums it up quite well. To date, extensive research did not show evidence to support a role of dietary cholesterol in the development of cardiovascular disease. As a result, the 2015 to 2020 dietary guidelines for Americans removed the recommendation of restricting dietary cholesterol to 300 milligrams a day.
And our diet, that if you eat, egg with, let's say, 200 milligrams of cholesterol, it's not going to raise your blood cholesterol, and it's not going to impact your risk of heart attacks.
Dr. Hyman isn't worried about eating cholesterol because our body produces more than we consume. Adding just 300 milligrams from an egg to our 10,000 milligram blood levels barely makes a difference. So how do these companies convince us that their GMO, soy-based, highly processed products with bizarre proteins, vegetable oils, and packed with additives and preservatives are actually healthy? They turn to a tried and true method, enlisting the help of wealthy, influential individuals and celebrities. Bill Gates, for example, he's made a habit of involving himself in health-related discussions recently.
Work to make what's called artificial meat. And so you have people like Impossible or Beyond Meat, both of which I invested in.
You eat it as well, and you like it?
Absolutely.
And the company that makes it, Impossible Foods, announced this week it's raised $75 million in new funding from investors like Bill Gates.
Even celebrities pitched in to help Impossible Foods scale up its manufacturing capabilities in order to meet growing demand. Kim Kardashian starts some internet beef. It's so crazy over how she eats fake meat.
And other high-profile figures too, eager to shape public opinion, like Serena Williams, Jay-Z, Katy Perry, and more. Even Snoop Dogg's getting in on it. It seems like the plant-based meat hype is everywhere. With all the star power behind plant-based meats, it's no wonder they've been dominating headlines and grocery store shelves recently. But behind the glitz and glamour, here's exactly what you need to know. Plant-based meats are highly processed. If you want to be healthy, eat whole foods. It's not meant to be complicated. Perhaps we should approach foods requiring teams of scientists to produce them with caution. Food, after all, ought to be simple, nourishing, and rooted in nature, not a product of impossible feats. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to watch our other video exposing the dark side of modern wheat, where we reveal the shocking and somewhat disturbing truth, how harmful modern wheat can be for our health. Just click the image on the screen now, and make sure to subscribe by clicking the other image on the screen too.